Happy New Year, guys! It is officially 2023. We are well into January now in 2023. As you guys know, I've had to take a little bit of a step back from the Mini Urban Farm YouTube channel and the Instagram account because we've had some stuff going on with the family. However, we are back and making videos. And so in today's video, I wanted to share with you guys the recap of 2022, everything that we managed to accomplish, that we set goals for ourselves on, and then what we ended up not doing in 2022, plus what we are going to be planning for in 2023. Now this year, all of our goals and aspirations that I want to share with you guys. So I have an entire 2-page list, front and back, that I will be sharing with you guys to make sure that I don't miss anything. All right, so first up on the list was to grow half of our own vegetables for 2022. All right, so vegetables and herbs. Now, I set the goal of having half of our own vegetables and herbs come from our garden simply because we moved from the old house to this house and we've been here all of 2022. We're staying with family, and so we have quite a small garden space, but we did actually manage to accomplish that goal. So instead of diversifying and trying to grow everything that I normally would grow in my garden, I limited it to only a few things, mainly salad greens, beans, tomatoes, and herbs. All right, so mainly I grew all of my own herbs. I didn't have to buy any herbs from the grocery store the entire year. The same thing goes with tomatoes and green beans. We have tons and tons of green beans still in the freezer. We managed to make a lot of our own pasta sauce this year and save it for later, freezing it mostly. And salad greens, we still have salad greens growing, and we haven't had to really go without salad greens at all, even through winter in 2022. So that's been pretty nice. That was definitely one thing that we managed to accomplish, no problem. Now, the second goal that we had, or one of our goals, second on the list here, that we had for 2022 was vermicomposting. So you guys watched me as I shared with you guys starting our own worm compost bin. We definitely went through some struggles at the very beginning with worm composting. We had some issues with the bin. I had some issues with the bin being, used a couple of times over and not really giving the worms what they needed. So we had some issues with the worms, and we had a lot of worms die on us. We did replace the worms quite a few times. And then at the end, I did manage to figure it out, and we had a nice, happy, healthy worm bin. However, I have decided that even though that was one of our goals for 2022, we are not moving forward with vermicomposting and our worm bin in 2023. Our worm bin has been completely wrapped up for the end of 2022, and we will not be doing it again anytime soon. That is for several reasons. One, it's a living pet, right? So this worm bin contains all these living animals in them, like worms, and so you have to take care of them, all right? And you have to feed them, and you have to make sure that they have the perfect conditions. And even though once you get the groove of it, it is not that difficult, it definitely is another animal that you're adding onto your property, onto your homestead, right? So you can't neglect them. You have to make sure that if you're going out of town, they have what they need. You have to make sure that you're checking on them on a regular basis and making sure that everything is stable and good, and you can't really forget about it. I'm not going to continue raising worms in 2023, but I have my worm castings from 2022. I have several bags of this, and I will be using this in the seed starting soil as a fertilizer to see if maybe that gives the seeds like an extra boost before I put them in the garden. So that's something I'll be trying out this season, which I'm really excited for. So I love having the vermicompost, and we got so much good worm castings, so many great worm castings to use on our fruit trees, which was the purpose of doing vermicomposting in the first place. However, we have decided that there are different types of fertilizer that we'll be using in 2023, and we will not be continuing with our worm bins. So next up on our list was to continue with our food forest. So if you've been following this channel for a little bit, you know that we are moving to a new property, hopefully here soon when the house is finished being constructed. And on that property, we are starting to grow a food forest. So we have been planting trees like crazy. We have definitely gone through a few different methods of clearing out the space. We learned the hard way that we needed a barrier to protect our trees and our young plants from things like deers that came and pretty much wiped out everything a few times. So we've definitely had some struggles and some really good learning experiences, I'll put it that way, for our food forest. But at the end of 2022, we did a really big push with trying to get some guilds established. So to date, we have 3 guilds, one of which was completed at the end of December, beginning of January. So 2.5 guilds or so we have managed to establish now. Of course, next year this will definitely be on our goals, and I will go into more detail when I'm explaining all of our goals for 2023. But for 2022, we hit this one out of the park. I feel good saying that, because even though we didn't manage to, grow acres of food on our food forest, we did a lot of work getting this established. We planted pretty much all the trees that we wanted in that space. I did a lot of research on creating guilds, and definitely settled on the fact that we are going to be building up the food forest in a guild strategy, so to speak. So that one I can safely check off our list for having accomplished our goal of 2022. Now, on to our next one, which is meat chickens. So I'm gonna go ahead and check this one off the list also, because we definitely made a lot of progress with our meat chickens. So we have a flock of chickens that we use for eggs, and then twice a year we take those eggs, which are fertile eggs because we do have a rooster. We take those fertilized eggs and we put them in the incubator, we hatch out baby chicks, and those baby chicks, we grow them out as our food source. Now, this does take a little bit more time than ordering them from the hatchery, but we definitely feel satisfied in going with this method of doing things, because we know that if the hatchery runs out of chicks, or we have another pandemic-like scenario, we have a sustainable meat source on our own property. I'm not gonna have to go and depend on any other source to get baby chicks. We can just hatch them out ourselves. So in 2022, we did 2 batches of meat chickens. We definitely had some learning experiences with them as well, because there's a lot of predators in our area, which I definitely did not think there would be, being in the suburbs. But we had a lot of raccoons, weasels, possums, things that could bury themselves underneath the chicken tractor and the chicken coop. And we had to put up a lot of barriers and a lot of predator proofing, fencing and sort of things in order to protect our investment, our chickens. So we definitely had a good go of it this year, but we managed to get the majority of our meat, our chicken meat, in the freezer from our own property. We bought very little chicken this year. Our second incubation didn't go as planned. We had about 30 chicks, 30 eggs in the incubator, and we only managed to get 10 out of them. Even though we had a really hard time with that incubation, we still did manage to get quite a bit of meat off of that for us. And so we didn't end up buying a whole bunch of chicken in 2022. Now, I will be keeping meat chickens. Like, that was always going to be on my list. I love having chickens for both meat and eggs. And we will continue to roll that one into 2023 because they're just such a sustainable option. Now, one of our things for 2022 was to add quail again. So we've had quail, I think 2 or 3 times now. The first time, to be honest, I don't exactly remember what happened. I think a predator came and got all of them, and we learned the hard way that we needed to put some predator proofing around the quail coop. Now, we started with quail for the second time, and we managed to raise them successfully. We got eggs, we got meat from them. The goal was that we were going to be raising them mostly for dog food, which worked out really well in the beginning because they're small and easy to butcher. It's not really difficult to butcher quail. However, the dog did not take to it the same way that I thought he would. He kind of was taken a little bit aback, and some of this might have been a little bit of my fault because I didn't, gradually introduce this as much as I could have. However, when we tried to use them for eggs and meat for ourselves, we found that it wasn't really a good investment. Chickens and other larger poultry are probably a better investment if you have the space and it's not against the regulations in your community. If we were living here only and our property, in the HOA doesn't allow chickens. So if we didn't have another property to raise our chickens on, then quail would be a great resource because they're not like chickens, they're not restricted through the HOA. However, we do have the other property and we can raise chickens. So raising quail was a lot of work. Incubating them and hatching them out is much harder, in my opinion, than raising chickens and hatching chickens because they are so much more fragile than chickens. They're so much more delicate. They die a lot faster than chicks do, or than chicken chicks do. So quail chicks, definitely they're really cute, but definitely more fragile. So maybe in the future we'll introduce another type of small animal so that we can use for dog food again in the future. But for right now, I think it's not worth the time investment that it takes to raise quail for our current situation right now. Now this one definitely we managed to do, which is to break ground on the house. So we personally didn't take the shovels and break ground, but we started the building of our house, right? We have a contractor, he's working on building our house along with the entire construction crew, and that is well on its way. We have run into several hiccups with the site work on our property and some of the boundaries with the county and things like that. However, we are well on our way to having a house, hopefully now in 2023, unless there's additional barriers that we can't foresee, knock on wood. Hopefully that won't happen. But in 2022, we broke ground on our house, and we also started a whole bunch of little miniature projects for that property. Right, so one of the things I wanted to do was start plants that I could use for landscaping on that property around the house to make it pretty, not necessarily just in the gardens, but as actual landscaping, like on the edging of the house or along the property line, things like that. So I started a whole bunch of rosemary starts or propagated rosemary, and then grew them into smaller bushes. There's a whole bunch of them in the miniature greenhouse right now that are gonna be up potted soon. And then I also took a whole bunch of plants I had some bougainvilleas that I managed to separate out into multiple plants, as well as some other ornamentals like snake plants and other things that I think would look nice around the property just overall as landscaping. So that was one of my things that I wanted to do in 2022 so that we have to spend way less on landscaping when the new house is done. And that one I think we definitely got because we have bougainvillea, we have snake plants, we have rosemary, we have a lot of other edibles that are very ornamental that we will be adding to our property once the house is done. However, one of my goals along those same lines was to start the garden on the property. I imagined we'd be able to start the garden while the house was being built. That way when we move in, we already have an established garden there. Now, we weren't able to do this pretty much at all for many reasons. One of which is the fact that we need a pond retention kind of area per the county because our property is on a flood zone. And so we have to kind of mitigate how much water is being displaced and staying on the property and all of that. And one of the likely places that pond mitigation will end up being is in that garden area that we thought we were gonna have. So I'm gonna have to lay it out and see, but we're still kind of working on that pond retention area. So I didn't want to start a garden and then have to rip it all out. And also we learned with the food forest that there's a lot of deer and other things that will eat our plants. And so that would also include putting up a lot more fencing around the garden as well. And that's something I didn't want to do because right now we have a lot of construction going in and out. We don't want to spend the money to invest in all that fencing and then rip it up and put something nicer on down the road. So we decided to wait on the garden. For right now, we're more than busy with our food forest build and then the garden here. So the garden on the new property will likely come after we move in to the new property. Okay, so the next few were things that I didn't actually accomplish in 2022. One of which is learning to can food. I didn't even try, and it wasn't for lack of wanting. I wanted to learn to can food. However, freezing food works pretty well. We are going to have a generator at our new property, so that ensures that the freezer works pretty much year round, even if we have hurricanes or anything like that. Number two is I don't really love the taste of canned foods. It's something I want to acquire as a skill eventually down the road, but realistically we started talking about it and no one here really loves the taste of canned foods. So it's something that eventually I'll learn so we have it in our back pocket, but I didn't want to put the time and effort, and we simply didn't have a lot of extra time when it came to this goal. So it kind of got pushed off to the back burner and probably will be pushed back to the back burner for a little while. The second of which we didn't accomplish is growing mushrooms. Now, I've wanted to grow mushrooms for the past several years. This has been on my goals for the past several years, and I still have not gotten around to it. Again, with everything going on, it's just something that I didn't even start. I started researching it, but I didn't actually take any actions to do it. My goal for next year, I think, possibly would be to include it in the food forest somehow. That way it's kind of like out there and not necessarily something that I have to check on every single day. We'll see how that goes, but definitely not something that I was able to get to in 2022. However, we were able to seed save as much as possible, which was on our goal list for 2022. That's not a very clear and measurable goal, I know, seed save as much as possible, but in the past years, I haven't been very diligent about seed saving, and now we are actually growing, even now during the winter, we're growing a lot of things out that are going to be saved for seeds. There's a lot of seed pods still in the garden, and I've been way more diligent with actually collecting them. So increasing the seed storage and then reusing those seeds has been something that I focused a lot on 2022. In fact, I was able to grow the majority of our green beans from seeds that I had saved from earlier in the year. So it definitely cuts on cost. I will continue to be doing that going forward because it is such a great way to save money in the garden. And it's also really a good feeling to know that you grew something and then you didn't have to buy the seeds to grow it again. So that was something I was really proud of in 2022 because that was a huge one on our goal list. Now, the last goal that I had for 2022 was to actually get to 5,000 subscribers on this channel. I started out the year, I think, with just over 1,000 subscribers in 2022, and my goal was by December 2022 to get to 5,000 subscribers. Now, as you guys know, if you watch this channel, we well over hit that out of the park. We were at 30-something thousand subscribers. I'll put the actual number here, the end of January, or the end of December, sorry. So this number here that you can see is the actual subscribers that I had at the end of December. So I'm so thankful to everybody who joined this community in 2022. We took a huge leap forward in growing this community and sharing so much information via the comments and on Instagram and in the videos that you guys provided feedback on. So I'm so thankful that we were able to get that far, and I'm hoping that next year or this year, 2023, will go just as well. So for our 2023 list, now a lot of these I've already covered, but I'll expand on them a little bit more. I'm gonna continue on with my goal of growing half our vegetables and all of our herbs. I think that went really well in 2022. That is gonna be the exact same goal I have in 2023 because it didn't take as much of my effort and time, and I'm gonna continue working towards that status quo just because I don't wanna add any more effort in. There's so much going on. So that'll be my first goal. Now, in 2023, I would like to increase the number of fruit tree guilds that we have in the food forest. So currently we have 3 guilds. We have a pomegranate guild, we have a lemon tree guild, and we have I think it's an apple and a plum, or I think it's a peach and a plum guild with blueberries around it. So that's the last one that we just completed. I added in a whole bunch more trees, and I would like to get to 5 more guilds. All right, so if you're not familiar with fruit tree guilds, the guild is the area around the fruit tree, and around it you plant like strawberries and blueberries and comfrey and other things that attract pollinators like flowers, right? So it all works together in a little system. And there definitely is a way to go about it to ensure you're planting all the right things that the guild needs to maintain itself. Hopefully I'll be able to share more about that in future videos this year, but my goal is to get 5 more fruit tree guilds in 2023. Next up on the list for 2023 is to continue on with our meat chickens. I know I discussed this one already. We're actually going to end up skipping the first batch of meat chickens this year because my dad had several issues at the beginning of this year, and we're helping him recover. I didn't think, and we didn't think it would be, myself and Alan, we didn't think that it would be a great use of our time to be worrying about the incubator and ensuring that the batch of meat chickens went well. It does take a little bit of effort and time, so we decided to forego that one. We'll be incubating in the fall or like late summer fall, so be ready for winter of this year. So we can harvest some meat off our meat chickens. But in the overall chicken flock, we are going to be adding in more colored egg layers, so more of those dark browns, more of the blues, greens, and we're adding white. All right, so we are getting those from a hatchery. They will be shipped over, I think, the beginning of February now, so we should be getting those soon. We'll raise those, and then ultimately we will integrate them into our existing flock. So that's exciting. And then eventually this year I will need to move the chicken coop because again, it is probably going to be in that same area where we might possibly need to put a water retention area on a property. So let's see what happens. But in the event that we need to move the chicken coop this year, I would like to have a really nice one instead of just the one that we currently have that was made with scrap materials. And along the same lines with the new property, at some point this year, hopefully, depending on the progress of the build and if we're there, I would like to have our garden start getting established and we would like to add another animal, whether that is ducks or bees. I'm not sure yet. I've been doing a lot of research on both. We would like to add Muscovy ducks because they are a little bit more self-sufficient and we don't have to incubate them. Like, they're really good at raising their own chicks, or their own ducklings rather. And I've been doing a lot of research on, you know, using ducks for permaculture at the same time. So we'll see, but another option is adding in bees. Now, I know bees are a little bit more intense than ducks might be, but in 2023, I would like to add another animal to our property, something that we can maintain long term. So I'm doing a lot more research on it than I've done in the past when it comes to another animal to add onto the property. Of course, once the house is done and landscaping is ready to go in, I will take all of the little seedlings and propagated items and plants that I have been working on for the past year and be able to plant those out. So of course, that's on my goal list when we move into the property, or right before we move into the property. I'm hoping to be able to just use all of the things I've grown to provide all of the landscaping and reduce severely on our landscaping budget. Now, our growing mushroom goal is going to roll over into 2023. I'm going to try to not put it off to the end of the year like I did the last several years. We shall see, because I'm looking at this list and there are quite a few things that require a lot of time on here. So we shall see how that goes, but hopefully I'll be able to incorporate that into the food forest at some point in time. And that will be, you know, maybe in a shaded corner. That way we have to worry about it less. We shall see how that goes. Of course, we're going to continue to seed save. That's been going really well. I've been able to use a little bit more of a permaculture approach to let things go to seed. Even though that takes away from our growing space, we are getting such value out of it. If you haven't ever saved your own seed, I would definitely encourage you to do that. Every type of crop requires a little bit of a different seed saving practice. Once you get the hang of it, it's definitely not difficult to do. So definitely seed saving is on our list to continue doing forevermore. Finishing our home build, hopefully. I have very little control over that depending on what the county says, but hopefully we will get that checked out off the list this year. And then our last goal for 2023 is to get to 100,000 subscribers on the Mini Urban Farm YouTube channel. So with that being said, if you have not yet subscribed and you love our videos, if you comment anything in the comments at any point in time, feel free to go ahead and subscribe, hint, hint, and also check out my new course that I have on growing food in your backyard, how to grow, you know, tons of food in a suburban area. It has been getting a lot of really good feedback and I think you'll really love it. Now, that is the end of this video. Thank you guys so much for watching and sharing in this community with me. If you have any goals that you want to share, I would be happy to follow along with them. Feel free to drop them in the comments below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.